The knock comes just after midnight, low and insistent against the thin apartment door, like fingers drumming against wood in a rhythm I don't recognize but somehow understand. I startle awake, the paperback book I've been reading sliding off my chest and hitting the hardwood floor with a dull thud. For a moment, I'm disoriented, caught between the fictional world I'd been drifting through and this one, where someone is at my door an hour when decent people are asleep. I sit up on the couch, my neck stiff from the awkward angle I'd fallen asleep in. The apartment is dark except for the reading lamp beside me, casting everything beyond its circle in shadow. The knock comes again, 3 measured raps that seem to echo through my chest. I know I should be cautious. This is the city, after all, and midnight visitors rarely bring good news. But something about the sound isn't threatening. It's almost hesitant, like the person on the other side is hoping I won't answer. I pad barefoot across the cold floor, my sleep-heavy limbs moving slowly through the quiet. When I reach the door, I pause with my hand on the deadbolt. Through the peephole, the hallway light reveals a figure I recognize immediately, even in the distorted fisheye view. Raphael from across the hall, though he looks different somehow. Smaller, younger in the harsh fluorescent lighting that never flatters anyone. I turn the lock and open the door, and the winter air from the stairwell rushes in, carrying with it the smell of snow and something else I can't name. Raphael stands there in bare feet, his hoodie unzipped over a thin t-shirt, and I can see his breath forming small clouds in the cold air. His dark hair is mussed, like he's been running his hands through it, and his eyes find mine before quickly darting away and then returning, as if he can't decide whether to look at me or not. "Heat's out again," he says, and his voice is rougher than usual, scratchy with sleep or something else. "Mind if I crash on your couch? Just need to stay warm." The words are casual, matter-of-fact, but there's something underneath them that makes my pulse quicken. I've lived across the hall from Raphael for 6 months now, and we've developed the kind of easy, neighborly relationship that consists of waves in the hallway and brief conversations over the mailboxes. He's the guy who turns his music down when I knock on his door, who accepts packages for me when I'm at work, who always seems to be coming or going at odd hours. But he's never been in my apartment before, and I've never been in his. I step aside without a word, gesturing him in. He moves past me, and I catch a hint of his scent, something clean and warm that reminds me of cedar and sleep. As I close the door behind him, I'm suddenly aware of how intimate this feels, having him in my space in the middle of the night, both of us in the clothes we sleep in. Raphael makes his way to the couch, moving with the kind of careful casualness that suggests he's trying not to seem as vulnerable as he actually is. He sinks into the cushions where I'd been sleeping moments before, the book still lying open on the floor beside him. Without asking, he reaches for the throw blanket I keep draped over the back of the couch, pulling it around his shoulders like a cape. The apartment feels different with him in it. Smaller somehow, but also more alive. I hover near the door for a moment, unsure of the protocol here. Do I go to bed and leave him alone? Do I stay up and make conversation? The situation feels charged in a way I don't fully understand, like the air before a thunderstorm. Raphael settles deeper into the couch, his eyes closing briefly as the warmth of the apartment begins to thaw him out. When he opens them again, he looks at me with an expression I've never seen before, something open and uncertain that makes my chest tight. "Unless," he says quietly, and the word hangs in the air between us like a question mark. His voice drops lower, almost a whisper. "You keep me warm yourself." The words hit me like a physical thing, spreading heat through my body in a way that has nothing to do with the temperature in the room. I stand frozen by the door, my hand still on the deadbolt, trying to process what he's just said. There's no mistaking the invitation in his voice, the way his eyes hold mine, without flinching this time. But there's also something fragile about it, like he's prepared for me to pretend I didn't hear him, to offer him a second blanket and retreat to my bedroom. The silence stretches between us, filled with the hum of the radiator and the distant sound of traffic from the street below. I can hear my own heartbeat in my ears, can feel the weight of this moment settling around us like snow. This isn't just about the heat being out in his apartment, I realize. Maybe it never was. Raphael watches me with those dark eyes, patient but uncertain, the blanket still wrapped around his shoulders. There's something boyish about the way he looks right now, despite being 2 years older than me. Something that makes me want to cross the room and smooth the worry line between his eyebrows, to tell him that whatever this is, it's okay. But I don't move. Not yet. Because I understand that this moment is a threshold, that once I step across the room and join him on that couch, things between us will change in a way that can't be undone. The easy waves in the hallway, the casual banter over mail, all of it will be colored by whatever happens next. The apartment is warm, warmer than it needs to be, but I can still see Raphael shivering slightly beneath the blanket. Or maybe that's not from the cold at all. Maybe it's from the same thing that's making my hands shake as I finally, slowly, push away from the door and take a step toward the couch. The floor feels different under my feet now, less solid somehow, like I'm walking across ice that might crack at any moment. But Raphael's eyes never leave mine, and there's something in his expression that tells me he's been hoping for this, maybe for longer than either of us wants to admit. The realization sends a warm flutter through my stomach, a feeling I've been ignoring for months but can't deny anymore. When I reach the edge of the couch, I hesitate one more time. The smart thing would be to get him another blanket, to set up some distance between us, to pretend his words were just a joke born of exhaustion and cold. But looking down at him now, wrapped in my blanket in my living room at midnight, I know that's not what either of us wants. The words hang heavy in the dim apartment light, heavier than the winter air that followed him in, heavier than all the unspoken things that have been building between us in 6 months of careful politeness. And for the first time since the knock came at my door, I let myself imagine what it would feel like to say yes. I've lived in this apartment for exactly 6 months and 12 days. I know because I counted when I paid rent this morning, scribbling the check while coffee cooled in a mug that still feels too big for my hands. The lease was the first thing I signed on my own, no parental co-signer, no roommate to split the bills. Just me and 4 walls and the kind of independence I thought I wanted. The apartment came furnished with mismatched pieces, this brown leather couch with a tear in the left cushion, a dining table that wobbles when you lean on it, a bed frame that creaks when I roll over in my sleep. The previous tenant left behind books, too. Paperbacks with broken spines and margins full of someone else's thoughts. I kept them all, arranging them on the built-in shelves like they might make the place feel less temporary. My routine is simple, almost monastic. 3 days a week, I work the night shift at the campus library, checking out textbooks to bleary-eyed students and reshelving returns in the quiet hours before dawn. The other days, I attend classes, study, and try to fill the spaces between obligation with something resembling a life. I'm good at solitude, always have been. I can spend entire weekends reading without speaking to another person, and the silence doesn't bother me the way it does some people. But Raphael changed that without trying. From the first week I moved in, he was there, a presence in the hallway, coming and going at hours that seemed to mirror my own odd schedule. The first time I saw him, I was struggling with grocery bags and a key that wouldn't turn in the lock, and he appeared beside me with an easy smile and steady hands, holding my bags while I wrestled with the door. He smelled like coffee and something warmer then, like he'd just come from somewhere comfortable. Our apartments are mirror images of each other, same layout but flipped. His door is exactly 12 feet from mine. I measured once, though I couldn't explain why I needed to know. Through these thin walls, I've learned the rhythm of his days. He's a night owl like me, but his sleeplessness sounds different than mine. Where I move quietly, carefully, he fills the space with sound. Video games that run until 3 in the morning, their electronic music bleeding through the plaster. A guitar he plays sometimes, folk songs I almost recognize, his voice a low hum I can feel more than hear. I've caught fragments of phone conversations, never the words, but the cadence of them. Long pauses where he listens, bursts of laughter that make me stop whatever I'm doing. Sometimes I hear him pacing, his footsteps tracing the same path mine do in my apartment, from the kitchen to the living room window, back again, like he's wearing a groove in the floor. We developed a pattern without discussing it. Morning waves when we collected mail at the same time, both of us squinting in yesterday's clothes. Brief conversations by the elevator, his classes, my work, the weather, safe topics that let us orbit each other without getting too close. He'd hold the door when my arms were full of laundry, and I'd accept packages for him when he wasn't home. Small kindnesses that felt larger in the context of city living, where most neighbors are strangers who happen to sleep in adjacent boxes. But there was always something else underneath those interactions, something that made me linger in the hallway a few seconds longer than necessary, something that made me notice when his lights were on late at night. I told myself it was just friendliness, the kind of casual connection that happens when you share a living space with someone. But I knew better even then. I learned his patterns. Tuesday nights, he had late classes and came home around 11, his backpack heavy with textbooks that thudded when he dropped them inside his door. Weekends, he disappeared for hours at a time, returning with the smell of other places on his clothes, restaurant kitchens, cigarette smoke, perfume that wasn't his. I never asked where he went, but I noticed when he came back, the way his footsteps in the hallway could pull me out of whatever I was reading. The guitar playing started about 2 months after I moved in. Always late at night, always soft enough that I had to strain to hear it. He wasn't particularly good at first. Missed chords, false starts, the same progression repeated until he got it right. But there was something achingly earnest about the way he practiced, alone in his apartment at midnight, learning songs I suspected he'd never play for anyone else. I started timing my own routines around his. I'd save my loudest chores for when I knew he was out, run the vacuum and the washing machine when his apartment was dark and quiet. It felt like a kind of courtesy, though I wondered sometimes if he was doing the same thing, if we were both stepping carefully around each other's solitude. Tonight shattered all of that careful distance. The knock on my door wasn't just a request for warmth. It was Raphael choosing to cross a line we'd been drawing and redrawing for months. And as I stand here at the edge of my couch, looking down at him wrapped in my blanket, I realized that all those months of polite conversation and careful boundaries were just preparation for this moment. We were always moving toward this midnight, this choice, this question hanging in the warm air between us. The barrier that kept us as friendly strangers has crumbled with 3 words: keep me warm. And I don't think either of us knows how to rebuild it. Raphael stretches out on the couch, his long legs extending toward the armrest, but there's nothing relaxed about the movement. It's performative, this casual sprawl, like he's trying to convince both of us that this is normal, that neighbors crash on each other's couches all the time at midnight. But I can see the tension in his shoulders, the way his fingers grip the edge of the blanket just a little too tightly. He shifts, pulling the throw higher up his chest, and the movement reveals a strip of skin above his jeans where his t-shirt has ridden up. I look away quickly, focusing instead on the book still lying open on the floor, its pages bent at odd angles from the fall. The silence stretches between us, not uncomfortable exactly, but charged with something I don't have words for. I should move. I should go to the linen closet and get him a proper blanket, maybe a pillow for my bed. I should turn off the reading lamp and retreat to my bedroom. Let him settle into sleep in the privacy of my dark living room. That would be the sensible thing, the thing that preserves whatever careful friendship we've built over 6 months of hallway conversations. But I don't move. I stand there at the edge of the couch, watching the rise and fall of his breathing, the way the lamplight catches in his dark hair. He's always been handsome in an understated way, the kind of face that gets more attractive the longer you look at it, features that seem ordinary until you notice how they fit together. But seeing him here in my space makes me aware of things I've been trying not to notice. The curve of his mouth when he's thinking, the way his hands move when he talks, graceful despite their size. Raphael shifts again, and this time when he looks up at me, there's something different in his expression. The careful mask of casualness has slipped, revealing something more honest underneath. Something that makes my chest feel tight and warm. He lifts one corner of the blanket, a gesture so small it could be accidental. But his eyes hold mine as he does it, and there's nothing accidental about the invitation in his voice when he speaks. Plenty of room, he says, and the words come out rougher than they should, like his throat is dry. The tease in his tone doesn't quite hide the uncertainty underneath, the way his voice catches slightly on the word room. The space he's revealed is barely big enough for one person, let alone two. The couch is old and narrow, the kind of furniture that came with the apartment because it was too worn for anyone to want it but too sturdy to throw away. But he's offering it anyway, offering the shared warmth of that small space, and we both know this isn't really about the temperature anymore. I hesitate for exactly 3 heartbeats, long enough to think about all the reasons this is a bad idea. Long enough to imagine trying to explain this to someone else, to justify why I said yes to my neighbor's midnight request. Long enough to remember that I've been alone in this apartment for 6 months, that I've grown used to the echo of my own footsteps, the sound of my own breathing in the dark. But then Raphael shifts again, making actual room this time, and the hesitation dissolves. I cross the space between us in 2 steps, the hardwood floor cold under my bare feet, until I reach the area rug in front of the couch. Up close, I can see the exhaustion in his face, the way his eyes are slightly red-rimmed, like he's been awake longer than he should be. The couch dips under my weight as I settle beside him, the old springs creaking in protest. The space is even smaller than it looked from across the room. My shoulder bumps against his as I try to find a comfortable position, and I feel him tense for a moment before deliberately relaxing, like he's reminding himself that this was his idea. He lifts the blanket to include me, and suddenly we're sharing more than just the couch. The throw is large enough to cover us both, but just barely. The fabric settles over my legs, carrying with it the warmth of Raphael's body and that same clean scent I caught when he first walked past me. Cedar and sleep, and something else I can't identify, but don't want to forget. The proximity is overwhelming. I can feel the heat radiating from his skin, can hear the soft sound of his breathing. When he moves to adjust the blanket, his knee brushes against mine, a contact so brief it might have been accidental if not for the way he doesn't immediately pull away. I try to find a position that doesn't involve touching him, but the couch is too small and we're both too aware of the space between us. Every shift, every adjustment seems to bring us closer together rather than farther apart. Finally, I give up trying to maintain distance and let my shoulder rest against his, let the warmth of that contact settle into something that feels almost natural. Raphael doesn't say anything, but I feel some of the tension leave his body. His breathing slows, becomes more regular, though I don't think he's anywhere close to sleep. Neither am I. We're both too conscious of this moment, of what it means to be here together like this, sharing space and warmth and something that feels dangerously close to intimacy. The reading lamp casts everything in soft gold, making the familiar lines of my apartment look different, more forgiving. Outside, the city continues its restless night, but here in this small circle of light and warmth, everything is slowed down to just this. 2 people on a too small couch, pretending this is simply about staying warm. Lying here together under one blanket, everything changes. The air itself feels different, charged with something electric that makes my skin hyper-aware of every point where our bodies almost touch. Raphael's shoulder is solid and warm against mine, and I can feel the steady rhythm of his breathing, slightly faster than it should be for someone who's supposed to be settling into sleep. At first, we both try to maintain some semblance of casual distance. Raphael keeps his hands carefully folded in his lap, and I focus on the far wall where shadows from the reading lamp dance across the faded paint. But the couch seems determined to pull us together. Every small shift sends us sliding toward the center, the old cushions creating a natural valley that makes separation almost impossible. When Raphael laughs, it's different from the easy chuckle I've heard in the hallway. This one is softer, more nervous, like a reflex he can't quite control. He's reacting to nothing in particular. Maybe the absurdity of 2 grown men trying to share a piece of furniture design for one. Maybe the strange intimacy of finding ourselves here after months of polite distance. I want to ask him what's funny, but I'm afraid of breaking whatever spell has settled over us. Instead, I let myself study his profile in the lamplight. The straight line of his nose, the way his dark lashes cast shadows on his cheeks. Features I've cataloged from across hallways and through brief conversations. but never from this close, never with this much time to really look. The blanket shifts as Raphael adjusts his position, pulling it higher, and his knuckles brush against my arm. The contact is brief, probably accidental, but it sends warmth spreading through my chest in a way that has nothing to do with temperature. I wonder if he felt it too, this spark of something that seems to happen every time we touch, however briefly. Minutes pass, or maybe it's longer. Time moves differently in this space we've created, this pocket of warmth and proximity that exists outside the normal rules of neighborly interaction. Raphael's breathing has settled into something deeper, more regular, but I can tell he's not sleeping. There's a quality to his stillness that speaks of someone trying very hard to appear relaxed. When he moves again, it's deliberate. A slow adjustment that brings his knee into contact with mine, the denim of his jeans rough against my bare leg. This time, he doesn't pull away. Neither do I. We let the contact linger, let it become something acknowledged rather than accidental. The couch creaks under our combined weight, a soft protest that seems unnaturally loud in the quiet apartment. But the sound doesn't startle us apart. If anything, it draws us closer, as if the furniture itself is conspiring to eliminate the careful distance we've been maintaining. I become hyper-aware of every small movement, every shift and adjustment. The way Raphael's arm settles more comfortably against mine. The way his head tilts slightly in my direction, not enough to be obvious, but enough that I can feel the warmth of his breath when he exhales. The way the blanket seems to shrink around us, creating a cocoon that makes the rest of the apartment feel distant and unimportant. My heart is beating too fast, and I wonder if he can feel it where our shoulders touch. I try to steady my breathing, to project the same casual calm that Raphael is attempting, but I'm failing badly. Every nerve ending feels electrified, every sense heightened. I can smell his shampoo, something clean and uncomplicated. I can hear the soft sound he makes when he swallows, a tiny human noise that somehow feels incredibly intimate. Raphael shifts again, and this time his movement is less restrained. His leg presses more firmly against mine, and his arm relaxes until it's resting along my back. Not quite an embrace, but close enough that I can feel the weight of it through my thin sleep shirt. The gesture is casual enough to have plausible deniability, but intentional enough that we both know it's a choice. I let myself lean into the contact just slightly, just enough to signal that this progression is mutual, that I'm not just passively accepting his advances, but participating in them. The movement brings us even closer together, close enough that I can see the faint freckles across the bridge of his nose, the small scar above his left eyebrow that I've never noticed before. The ordinary living room has transformed around us. The familiar furniture, the books on their shelves, the window that looks out onto the street. All of it feels like scenery from someone else's life. What matters now is this small space we occupy together, this shared warmth that's beginning to feel like something much larger than the sum of its parts. Raphael's laughter comes again, softer this time, barely more than a breath. But when I look at him, his expression is serious, almost vulnerable. The mask of casual ease has dropped completely now, replaced by something raw and honest that makes my chest feel tight. The confession is in his eyes before he speaks it, in the way he stopped trying to maintain distance, in the careful way he's letting himself touch me. This isn't about a broken heater or a need for shelter. This is about want, pure and simple, and the courage it takes to acknowledge that one is someone who could easily reject it. The night grows still around us, the city noise fading to a distant hum. Here, in this space between sleeping and waking, between neighbors and something more, every small movement feels like a revelation. The words come like a whisper in the dark, so quiet I almost think I've imagined them. Raphael's voice is different now, stripped of the casual banter that usually colors our conversations. There's something raw in it, something that makes my stomach flip with recognition. Didn't come here just cause the heat's out. The confession hangs in the air between us, heavier than the blanket we share, more substantial than the warmth radiating from his body pressed against mine. I feel my breath catch, feel something fundamental shift in the space around us. This moment has the weight of truth to it, the kind that changes everything once it's spoken. I turn to look at him, and I'm surprised by how close his face is to mine. Close enough that I can see the uncertainty flickering in his dark eyes. The way his lips are slightly parted as if he's holding his breath, waiting for my reaction. The reading lamp catches the angular line of his jaw, throws shadows that make him look older, more serious than the easygoing neighbor I thought I knew. He doesn't look away this time, doesn't deflect with humor or retreat into the safety of casual conversation. Instead, he holds my gaze with something that feels like courage, like he's decided that whatever happens next, at least it will be honest. I feel his hand move beneath the blanket, a tentative exploration that finds my fingers where they rest against my thigh. The contact is gentle, questioning, as if he's asking permission for something we both know we want, but neither of us has dared to name. His fingertips brush against my knuckles, trace the spaces between my fingers with a touch, so light it might be accidental, if not for the way his eyes never leave mine. The simple contact sends electricity through my entire body. 6 months of careful politeness, of measured distance, and safe conversations, and it all comes down to this. His fingers finding mine in the warm darkness beneath a shared blanket. The touch is innocent enough, but it carries the weight of everything we haven't said, everything we've been too careful to acknowledge. When he threads his fingers through mine, the movement is slow, deliberate. There's nothing accidental about the way he turns his hand to fit against mine, nothing casual about the way his thumb traces across my palm. The gesture is tender in a way that makes my chest tight, intimate in a way that transforms the familiar living room into something entirely new. I can feel my heart beating too fast, can hear the slight change in Raphael's breathing that tells me he's as affected by this contact as I am. His hand is warm and slightly rough, calloused in a way that speaks of guitar strings and manual labor, of a life I know so little about despite 6 months of living 12 feet apart. The revelation isn't just in his words, but in this touch, in the way he's stopped pretending this is about anything other than want. Pure, simple want that's been building between us in hallway encounters and through thin walls, in the careful way we've orbited each other without ever quite making contact. I should say something, should respond to his confession with words of my own. But I find myself speechless, overwhelmed by the weight of this moment and the way it's rewriting everything I thought I understood about us. Instead, I do the only thing that feels honest. I squeeze his hand back, firm and steady, letting the pressure of my fingers against his communicate what my voice can't manage. Raphael's exhale is audible in the quiet room, a sound of relief so profound it tells me how much courage this moment has cost him. His forehead drops forward until it's almost touching mine, close enough that I can feel the warmth of his breath against my skin. The gesture is intimate without being overtly sexual, tender in a way that makes something deep in my chest ache with recognition. Up close like this, I can see things I've never noticed before. The way his eyelashes are longer than they appear from a distance. The small mole just below his left ear. The way his lips are slightly chapped, like he's been worrying them with his teeth. Details that feel precious somehow, secret knowledge that comes with proximity. The blanket has shifted around us, tangled from our careful movements, but neither of us moves to adjust it. We're wrapped together now in a way that makes it impossible to tell where the fabric ends and our bodies begin. The physical closeness should feel overwhelming, but instead it feels like coming home to something I didn't know I was looking for. Raphael's grip on my hand tightens slightly, and I can feel the tremor in his fingers that tells me he's nervous despite his boldness. This is uncharted territory for both of us, this space between neighbors and something more, between wanting and having. But his touch is steady, sure, even as his breathing betrays how much this moment means to him. The city continues its restless night beyond the walls of my apartment. But here in this small circle of lamplight and shared warmth, time has slowed to accommodate the magnitude of what's happening. This isn't just about attraction or loneliness or the human need for connection. This is about recognition, about finding something in another person that answers a question you didn't know you were asking. His thumb traces patterns across my palm, absent movements that speak of someone trying to memorize the feel of this moment. And I let myself be memorized, let myself fall into the simple intimacy of being known by someone who has chosen to cross every boundary we've carefully constructed between us. My heart pounds so hard I'm certain Raphael can feel it where our bodies press together, certain the rhythm of it is betraying every careful thought I've tried to maintain about boundaries and appropriate neighbor relationships. The weight of his confession hangs between us like a bridge I can either cross or burn, and I know that whatever choice I make in this moment will determine not just tonight, but everything that comes after. I could laugh it off. The thought surfaces with startling clarity, a lifeline thrown by the part of my mind that still believes in safety, in the comfortable distance we've maintained for 6 months. I can make a joke, something light and dismissive that would let us both retreat into familiar territory. Something about the cold, making people say crazy things. About midnight, making everything seem more dramatic than it really is. Raphael would probably grab onto the escape route gratefully, and we could pretend this moment never happened. But looking at him now, seeing the vulnerable honesty in his expression, I know I can't do that to either of us. There's too much courage in his confession, too much risk in the way he's laid himself bare. To dismiss, it would be cruel in a way that feels fundamentally wrong, like rejecting a gift someone has spent months gathering the courage to offer. Instead, I do something that surprises us both. I squeeze his hand back, not gently this time, but firmly, deliberately, with the kind of pressure that speaks of decision rather than accident. The gesture is small but unmistakable, a choice made conscious and clear. Raphael's reaction is immediate and profound. His entire body seems to exhale, tension I didn't realize he was carrying flowing out of him like air from a puncture balloon. The relief in his face is so naked it makes my chest ache. He shifts closer, close enough that his forehead actually touches mine now, close enough that our breathing mingles in the small space between us. The contact is electric, not sexual exactly, but intimate in a way that feels almost more powerful than anything overtly physical could be. We're sharing the same air, the same heat, the same carefully constructed moment that exists outside of time and consequence. I can see every detail of his face from this distance, the slight asymmetry of his features that makes him more attractive rather than less, the way his pupils are dilated in the lamplight, the small scar through his left eyebrow that I want to ask about, but don't want to break this spell with questions. Don't tell anyone, he whispers, and the words are barely audible, more breath than sound. But even as he says it, his grip on my hand tightens, his fingers threading more securely through mine as though he's daring me to let go, daring me to prove him wrong about the need for secrecy. The request should sting, should feel like rejection or shame or an indication that what's happening between us is something to be hidden. But there's something in the way he says it, something desperate and protective rather than dismissive. That tells me it's not about shame at all. It's about preservation, about keeping this fragile thing safe until we understand what it is, until we know whether it can survive in the harsh light of day and normal conversation. I understand the impulse completely. This moment feels too precious, too new to expose to the scrutiny of friends or family or even our own rational minds. It needs time to grow in the dark, like something planted in rich soil that won't survive if disturbed too early. But his grip on my hand tells a different story than his words. The way he holds onto me speaks of someone who doesn't want to let go, who's asking for secrecy not because he's ashamed, but because he's protective of something that feels infinitely valuable and infinitely fragile. His thumb traces patterns across my knuckles, absent movements that suggest he's trying to memorize the shape of my hand, the texture of my skin. The silence between us isn't empty now. It's full of everything we're not saying, heavy with possibility and want, and the strange intimacy of two people who have suddenly found themselves much closer than they ever planned to be. I can hear the soft sound of his breathing, can feel the warmth radiating from his skin, can smell that clean scent that I'm beginning to associate with safety rather than distance. The choice crystallizes in this moment, not in words, but in the silence between them. I could pull away, could create distance, could honor his request for secrecy by ensuring there's nothing to keep secret. But instead, I lean forward slightly, just enough to close the last inch of space between us, just enough to signal that his whispered plea for discretion isn't falling on unwilling ears. The movement brings our lips close enough to touch, but we don't kiss. Not yet. Instead, we exist in this space of almost this moment of possibility where everything is about to change but hasn't quite yet. The anticipation is almost unbearable, a tension that makes every nerve ending feel hyper-aware, every breath feels significant. Raphael's eyes flutter closed, and I watch his face in the lamplight, memorizing the way he looks in this moment of suspension. Vulnerable and hopeful and afraid all at once, like someone standing at the edge of something vast and unknown, gathering courage for a leap that could change everything. The choice has been made, sealed not in words, but in the silence between them, in the way we hold onto each other despite the request for secrecy, in the way we've both decided that some risks are worth taking even when the outcome is uncertain. The blanket is tangled around us now, twisted from our careful movements and adjustments, creating a cocoon that feels both protective and restrictive. The couch that seemed adequate when Raphael first sat down now feels impossibly small, barely wide enough to contain two bodies that have unconsciously arranged themselves to fit together like pieces of a puzzle we never knew we were solving. My left arm is gone, slightly numb where it's pinned beneath Raphael's weight, but I don't move to adjust it. The discomfort feels insignificant compared to the warmth of having him pressed against me, the solid reality of his presence after months of careful distance. His head has found a place against my shoulder, his dark hair soft against my neck, and I can feel the steady rhythm of his breathing as it gradually slows towards something that might eventually become sleep. But we're both too aware, too present in this moment to truly rest. There's a hypervigilance to the way we hold ourselves, like we're afraid that sleep might break whatever spell has settled over us, might return us to the safe boundaries of neighborly politeness when morning comes. So we exist in this space between waking and sleeping, between wanting and having, between the familiar and the completely unknown. Raphael's hand is still clasped in mine beneath the blanket, our fingers interlocked in a way that feels both natural and miraculous. His palm is warm and slightly damp with nervous sweat, but he shows no inclination to let go. If anything, his grip tightens occasionally, small unconscious movements that suggest he's as reluctant as I am to break this connection. The apartment around us has faded into irrelevance. The books on their shelves, the window that looks out onto the sleeping city, the familiar furniture that has defined my solitary life for 6 months. All of it feels like scenery from someone else's story. What matters now is this small space we occupy together, this shared warmth that has become something larger and more significant than the sum of its parts. I don't know what tomorrow will bring. The thought surfaces with uncomfortable clarity, cutting through the haze of contentment that has settled over me. Tomorrow, we'll have to navigate whatever this has become in the harsh light of day, have to figure out how to exist as neighbors when we've crossed every boundary that made that role possible. Will we exchange awkward waves in the hallway, both of us remembering the weight of his hand in mine? Will he retreat into embarrassed distance, treating tonight like a mistake born of cold and loneliness? The uncertainty should be terrifying, but somehow it isn't. Maybe it's the steady rhythm of Raphael's breathing against my neck, or the way his thumb occasionally traces patterns across my knuckles. But I find myself less concerned with what tomorrow might bring than with preserving the reality of right now. This moment feels too precious to contaminate with worry about consequences or complications. Raphael shifts slightly, adjusting his position without fully waking, and the movement brings him even closer. His knee slides between mine, his arm tightens around my waist, and suddenly we're tangled together in a way that feels both innocent and profoundly intimate. The position should be uncomfortable. We're both too tall for this couch, too broad to share this narrow space without awkwardness. But instead it feels like coming home to something I didn't know I was missing. The warmth is real now, solid and undeniable in a way that has nothing to do with the broken heater that brought him to my door. It radiates from every point where our bodies touch, spreads through my chest, and settles into something that feels suspiciously like peace. For someone who has grown comfortable with solitude, who has built a life around the safety of emotional distance, this sudden intimacy should feel overwhelming. Instead, it feels like the most natural thing in the world. I let my eyes drift closed, not to sleep, but to better focus on the sensory details of this moment. The weight of Raphael's body against mine, warm and solid and real. The soft sound of his breathing, occasionally interrupted by small movements as he settles deeper into sleep. The faint scent of his shampoo, clean and comforting in a way that makes me want to turn my face into his hair and breathe him in. Outside, the city continues its restless night. Cars pass on the street below, their headlights creating brief patterns of light and shadow across the ceiling. Somewhere in the building, a door closes, footsteps echo in the stairwell, the ordinary sounds of people living their separate lives in adjacent boxes. But here, in this small circle of lamplight and shared blankets, we've created something that exists outside of all that isolation. The final image settles over me with a weight of recognition. Two neighbors asleep on a too small couch, our hands still clasped beneath the tangled blanket, the midnight quiet holding our secret like a promise. We've crossed a line tonight that can't be uncrossed, acknowledged something that can't be taken back. Whatever tomorrow brings, awkwardness or tenderness, regret or continuation, tonight we are this. Two people who chose warmth over safety, connection over distance, honesty over the comfortable lie of indifference. The reading lamp casts everything in gold, softening the edges of the familiar until it looks like something from a dream. And maybe that's what this is, a dream we've decided to share, a moment stolen from the careful architecture of our separate lives. But dreams end with morning, and this feels too substantial, too real to dissolve with daylight. The midnight quiet holds us, protects us, keeps our secrets safe until we're ready to discover what it means.